Welcome to Kanoi Wanyayi broadcast. This is Sangwa Dispiwa Kachiza Mapfumo, and Happy New Year to everybody. We were on a little break since January, since Christmas anyway, but we are back. And today I've got another person, ordinary people doing extraordinary stuff. I've got my fantastic friend, my old friend, Dorcas Chibanda Trail. We all know her. If you were in Zimbabwe during the 80s, you can't miss this name. Dorcas is a veteran journalist, a veteran newsreader, broadcaster. And I worked with her way back when we were we were young women, back in the 1980s. Dorcas, welcome to the program. I want to talk to you about your experience as a broadcaster and, what it's been like since you left. Say hello to everybody who's following us.
Thank you, Sriwe. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. So, as I said earlier on, you are a trailblazer. Back in the 1980s, when you got our independence, you were one of the very few Black women, very few Black people who were working for ZBC. And it was a new experience, really, going and broadcasting. A Black person. It was, I remember I used to watch her and I said, this woman, this young lady is really, really good. And I want you to talk to me about your background. You were coming from Zambia, right?
Yes, I came from Zambia. I grew up in Zambia.
Okay. Talk to me about your back before you came to Zimbabwe, to independent Zimbabwe. What was happening in Zambia?
In Zambia, that's where I obviously had my education, most of my education, secondary and obviously university, etc. And my parents had gone to Zambia. My dad was an expatriate, so we moved to Zambia when I was about 3 months. So I came back from Zambia when I actually, was done with all my education. So we came back as a family back to Zimbabwe.
Mm-hmm. As I said, you were a young woman. You were like in 20s, maybe late.
Yes.
Yeah, very early 20s, because I also was in my mid-20s when I first met you at ZBC. It's hard to believe it's such a long time ago, but
it's been a while since we've actually been in touch, isn't it? How small the world is.
That's right. I mean, but once a journalist, always one. And at that time, I do remember our experiences. I pretty much think was the same in ZBC. There were still lots of white people working for ZBC, and some Black people who were also joining. And that time, just the whole atmosphere was pretty much different. How did you feel?
I was not really affected much by the atmosphere, because I think when I came to Zimbabwe, I'm generally a go-getter, because I saw a advert in our local newspaper, The Herald, and they were advertising for news presenters. So when I read this, something just struck a chord in me, and I said, I'm going to go for this. So I remember making a phone call, and Pocket Seal that was, and I was asked to come in for what they called an audition. And I went there. I really didn't know much, really. So then we had the person that was heading the news side of things, the late James Robinson. So I think there were quite a few of us, and we were given a couple of scripts to sort of like do what they call a dummy bulletin. So each one got a turn to sit on the desk and to sort of like present news the way you think you'd do it. So I remember sitting there, and I think I was given 4 A4 size sheets, and they had some news items on them. So I left and went back home, and I wasn't too sure what had really transpired. But lo and behold, the next morning, I get a phone call to say that, could I come in? And I said, wow. So when I got there, what James Robinson said to me, you are naturally gifted. yes, there's going to be a bit of training here and there because of all the education I've done, none of it had anything to do with broadcasting. So my talent is really a God-given talent, which obviously was groomed through a lot of training, in-house training, being sent away at different locations to get the relevant training. And then from then on, I started going in to get the training. And with broadcasting, what I have learned over the years is that you can have the academic background, whether the journalism or whatever qualification you have, but you have got to create your own style because that's what makes broadcasters stand out. We've got our own way of doing things, our own way of presenting. So it's really about creating an identity through the way you do things.
You're so right, because there's so many people who can speak. There's so many people who can say things, but there is something that makes one outstanding. And you're quite so correct on that one. And who else were you working with that time? I do remember there was Noreen Wells.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Who were the other presenters you were working with that time?
I had Noreen Welsh, there was Colin Harvey, and the late Godfrey Majonga, the late Wellington Bofana, and
Shingira Evirimai.
Oh, Shingira Evirimai. Oh, okay, I've just said his actual name is Shingira Itungwarara. Anyway, that's him. Yeah, Tungwarara. That's his actual name. So yeah, those were the few people. I mean, there were people that came in between that joined, but it was a nice thing, you know, like going into that newsroom, picking up the script, going through them, changing them accordingly, obviously with the supervision of whoever was the editor-in-chief that day. Otherwise, it was a very nice time to be in the newsroom.
And I think it was a nice time for ZBC, actually working ZBC. I do remember every Fridays there was that
barbecue.
Yeah, I remember they had that barbecue. People used to get together and then chill and just hang out with other journalists.
It was very nice. It was a monthly thing, isn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
And we all look forward to it, right?
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. But, you know, through the television news, I also, you know, branched out now into doing radio news as well. So I was also a presenter for radio news.
Okay.
And the shifts were weird. Sometimes get to work at 5 a.m. in the morning for the early morning shift. And then there was one later on in the day. So my broadcasting experience exposed me to quite a lot of things. I produced, presented programs. I did continuity, you know, being an announcer on Radio 1.
Yes.
And then it was called the station for the mature listener, as they refer to it. So so I think I did a stint in so many things, as well as voiceovers to do commercials.
That's right.
And besides doing the in-house voiceovers, I had the opportunity to work with quite a couple of prominent advertising agencies. I don't know whether they're still there. You know, places like Barker McCormack.
Yes, they're still there. Barker is still there.
Oh, what about Matthewman, Bank and Follett? They were
I don't think so. I remember. I don't think they're still there, but I do know Barker McCormack is still there. I don't know with who owns it or what's happening there, but I do know somebody who works there.
Okay.
Yeah. I do remember the radio when you also were in radio and working with the likes of Miriam Patsanza.
Oh yes, Miriam. Yes, and Temba
Hove and
who else? Janie So.
Yes.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah,
it's interesting to reminisce and think back of all these people who worked for ZBC those early days. There were lots of very talented and gifted people who
very,
yes,
very.
who joined, who were in news, and then we had some who were in programs.
Yes,
Yes.
and reporting, and you had the reporters as well.
Well,
So it
that's
was a big group of people that work together, but everybody's all spread everywhere now. So
I remember
yeah,
Mabel. She was she in Mabel
Mabel Mundondo,
Ndondo. Yes, that's another one we worked with, and Sissy Angela. What was her name?
Angela.
And
Wow.
I can't remember the name, but all those
Uh,
people. Yeah, all those people work for ZBC, and very interesting people. And I know younger people, they have no idea what we're talking about.
no, I don't think. Like when I do visit, I go in sometimes, and
Mhm.
there's very few people that I worked with. Yeah, there's one or two, but the majority have left. Like a couple of the news presenters
Mhm.
are into PR,
Yeah, true.
and yeah, oh, people have moved.
People have moved on. I mean, people have moved on, and but it's a long time. We're talking of 40 years ago. We forget, right? We're
Yeah,
talking 40 years ago when we worked out there and we were young, as I said earlier, only very young, straight from college and
very,
university.
very young.
Yeah. But now we are the twilight where the times have gone. So.
Yeah, but broadcasting will always be a part of one. I mean, like in my case, I mean,
Mhm,
it's like you have the saying, you can take somebody out of the ghetto, but you can't get the ghetto out of them. It's the
yeah.
same with broadcasters. I mean, you can take me away from the microphone, but the minute you put me in front of one, I'm good to go.
Look at you.
It's
Look at you
it's
now. I mean, yeah, you don't do this every day, but it's
no,
natural. It's a natural. It just kind of comes out without any effort, right?
yeah, no, it's just one of those things. I think if you um it's part of your
Hmm.
identity. I do a few things here and there, but I don't think being an MC has always been a big thing for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
On very, very few occasions do I sort of like come in.
Hmm.
I'm sort of like the person who'd love to be behind the microphone, producing, presenting, or doing something, but not. A lot of people have said, "Oh, why don't you do this?" On a few occasions, I have, but it's
Yeah,
not really my style.
yeah, that's not your thing. So
Yeah.
tell me, you were in Zimbabwe in 1980 to 2000, and then you moved to the UK.
Yes, I did.
Yes, and all like I suppose most people who were doing something completely different and now moved to the diaspora and working in completely
Yeah.
different fields,
Yeah.
different worlds. What
True.
has your interest been now since you moved to the UK? What has your focus been? What are your interests now, other than broadcasting?
Um, yeah, when I got here, I was a bit keen on broadcasting, but obviously it seemed like there were too many hurdles. But I did do a couple of courses. I
Mhm.
remember because when I came to the United Kingdom, in Zimbabwe, we were still using analog,
Yeah.
whereas here in the United Kingdom, they switched to digital. So it was
Mhm.
interesting and quite good to work with a digital system. So
Mhm.
I acquired that skill, but then thereafter I think I did a bit of work with the Refugee Council,
Mhm.
and then I was working with women that were coming into the country, that were trying to get established, get settled. But I
Mhm.
didn't stay there very long, and then I trained to be what they call a community interpreter. So you can either interpret for any of the six government departments, and I chose immigration.
Mhm.
So I did further studies, and I became what they call a caseworker.
Okay.
And I go between firms, some centers where they sort of like maybe hold people if things are
Mhm.
not set in stone. So yeah, that's been my job, and I interpret for 2 languages, my mother tongue and one Zambian language, which is called Bemba. So what I really do is I interpret from the client to the barrister or the solicitor. And then what the solicitor says, I let the client know. And I can do that in a court, in a law firm, or wherever the services are required. And obviously, having gained more skill, I can actually take what they call initial instructions. And this will be, if the person comes in with a case, what I do is jot down the main points to make it easier for the legal representative, and then they take it over from there and see what best can be done. And something else I'm very passionate about is I learned how to deal with women fleeing things like domestic violence, because we have even women that are trafficked into this country and they fall into that category. So what I do is I visit, when invited, safe havens, where I go and speak to women who are maybe needing help. And we try and make a plan to see how they can be helped. If there are children involved, we involve the relevant departments to help them. It's something I'm very passionate about, helping women. But that's something I do when I do get the time. There's a point where I did it on a much bigger scale, but obviously I have to sort of like split the time I have with my normal work and in a little bit of time I can spare to work with the women.
But well, to me, that's quite a noble activity you're doing to help these women, because I know what it can be in the diaspora, and more so like immigrant women. When they do arrive, sometimes one gets lost, and there are just so many things that one has to juggle with, sometimes language barriers, just also intimidated by a process which you are not quite used to, and settling, settlement and getting children to school, and when one is in a marriage, and trying to juggle all these things and compact it with the domestic violence, for instance. One doesn't know what to turn to. You have no idea. You need somebody you can trust in the safe space where you can talk about some of these challenges, right?
Yeah, true. Then, it's like some of them maybe do never eventually get help because maybe they're not pinpointed to where they can get help, or they themselves have not, spoken about it or come out to say what is going on. Because the challenge I used to face, like when I was dealing with women, like even at the Refugee Council, was that there was no understanding between the role of the police and the role of immigration, because these poor women would think, oh, I'm not yet settled legally in this country, so should I go to the police and make it known that I'm in a very difficult situation? The thought that the police will in turn hand them over to immigration. So a lot of women suffered in silence because of not having the right information to let them know that these two departments operate independently of each other. So, those were some of the things I came across.
Yeah, I can totally understand. I've worked with immigrant women as well out here, and I know the challenges that are there, and they are real. And when one looks at them, it's just like, oh, what's their problem? They get, particularly here in Canada, there are so many services around, but even though those services are available, the resources are there, the services are there, but just the fear of not understanding, am I safe doing this? Am I okay doing this? And do I qualify? And where do I start? And with other people from other countries, coming from other countries, where language is a barrier. And when you tell people, they don't quite understand how this can impact the outcome.
Yeah,
with this.
Definitely so, definitely. But at the end of the day, that things do get done eventually. But
But it's good that there are people who are doing their things to help them, to assist them, and when it's over, if you finally meet them 6 years later and they're happy, they're got a job or
yeah,
more happy, and you say, is that the same person? Yeah, who was timid
it's
and not.
always good to meet up, like
Yeah,
maybe have a you know have a coffee morning or whatever with some of
sure.
them that eventually got settled, and
Yeah.
you just hear some of the stories they have to say, and maybe at the same time they might just want one or
Mhm.
two bits of advice or to be pinpointed somewhere. But it's
Yeah,
always good. It's always good to
good for
meet up.
you. Good job. Good job. And we like to hear such stories. Now, getting back to broadcasting, getting back to journalism. What
Yeah.
what would do you remember any outstanding situation that you went through during that time, that 1980, maybe the first 5 years when you were first new in there? What do you remember?
I think what I can remember were the instances where you really had to stay so focused. That's one thing I learned about being on that desk,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes you would be in the middle of news and somebody would just come through, whichever presenter was not on air, to give you stories. You needed to drop a story and sort of like insert another one. It could be a bit raffling a little,
Sure.
or you would read a particular story, introduce the story, and maybe it had a film clip that followed. Then they play a different film clip for a story that you haven't read. So you always had to stay,
Calm.
yes, stay calm and ahead of your game. So what you needed to do was then apologize for the story you read, and then introduce the story that's just been played. It's like you needed to do a switch and say, oh, actually, the clip that we just played was da 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 da, and go down to your script and read that story.
You almost have to do a little prayer that, oh God, I hope whoever, because that was difficult. It wasn't digital, right?
Yeah.
And hoping
No,
whoever is moving this film, he's gonna get the right thing within 2 minutes while I'm blabbing around, and then when it gets, and then you continue on, right? Or
and then
else
at
you lose it.
times, at times they might not even have that clip, maybe that particular story you've read. So I think you just needed to be alert. You needed to be prepared to either apologize, switch scripts. But I found it very interesting. I think it kept you on your
Alert.
toes. You just needed to do what needs to be done. But I enjoyed it. I mean, sometimes I used to ask myself, "Gosh, how did we get through that?"
And it's not such a long time. The news, this wasn't like it wasn't 1 hour, but when you manage to get through it, it's like, right?
Yes, it was what, 8 p.m. to what time? I can't remember now.
I can't remember
Less
now.
than an hour, 5 minutes, including sports news or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
something like that.
you're okay. That another thing I was gonna, it can actually be quite daunting. I do remember. I won't forget this. This was the late our dear friend Tsitsi Vera and
Oh,
Noreen Wells, about the story of a child who fell through was it a train, whatever, and
oh, that one about I think the lady had a baby, gave birth. I
I
think
think
on
so,
the.
something like that.
Yeah.
It was like, whoa, it wasn't funny but funny, and of course there were some repercussions to that. What were you laughing? That is not even funny. And um I remember that very
I
clearly.
think you needed to be straight faced.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you were taught that try, do your best.
Yeah.
I mean, if something is hilarious, yeah, it's within your rights to sort of like have a giggle, have a little bit of a laugh,
Yeah.
but not to go all out. obviously, as you said, there were repercussions, but it's a place where you needed to be serious all the time.
You had to be. You had to look right. You had to be serious. You had to look right.
Yes.
And you had to be a face that we could listen to and say, look, she's giving us information that we need to know. So
yes.
I don't think that was a place for funnies. And I think you guys did a great job. I mean, those days it was really.
Yeah, it was really, and obviously we were taught that facial gestures, it was within your right to express them, but in an appropriate manner. If you did laugh or smile, it needed to be,
yeah,
almost like stiff lipped.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Yeah.
Because not very many stories were so hilarious, really, on news.
Yeah.
Not very many of them, anyway.
Well, I have no intention of running down younger journalists or reporters or news readers, but things have changed a lot. Even just the etiquette, and I'm from the older generation, and really sometimes
old school.
Yeah, from old school, and you watch these things, and I just see the differences in this kind of this field. With the people who are the younger people, and also it's a new generation, it's a different generation, but I still think there are certain things about journalism which will always stay the same, which will always be standard, and it doesn't matter who is coming in on it, but if they don't have those pieces, it just won't fly. It just won't fly.
I think it was different during our time, because you had people like the late James Robinson. They even had sort of like a dress code, and they decided who they thought should be on television and who should specifically just be on radio. And that was something that I at some point found quite difficult, because before I left to come to the United Kingdom, I'd become what they refer to as a voice trainer. So in this role, I trained prospective presenters for both radio and television. So the biggest challenge would be that the majority of people wanted television. So I was fortunate enough, I'd run away from that one and hand it over to the superiors, because there was a certain criteria for television, and I didn't want to be the one to be telling people to say, oh no, because of ABCD, we can't put you there. I did the training, and that's all I did. And then you had a challenge of people that thought that being trained to be a presenter was meaning that I was training them to then end up speaking like me.
You know what? Each had their own style.
Yes.
You can be fantastic, but I can't be Dorcas.
No, everybody's got their own style. Uniqueness is something that's great, but one just needed to understand that what I'm there for is to help you understand which points you can take a breath within the sentence without making it obvious, and where you break the sentence, where the story does not lose its sense.
Yes.
So those are the things, and composure, how they were to sit and how they were to speak out, projection of the words, and where to emphasize. Especially we had a folder that had foreign names, and you see they'd write them in such a way that you'd be able to identify names from that country, looking at that folder to tell you pronounce this that way, or
how do you pronounce Ceausescu? Right.
Ceausescu was, but there were African countries that had Ouagadougou is the capital of and it's spelled O-U-G.
That's right.
And when you pronounce it, it's wa. Exactly. So you needed to understand countries and the way they pronounce their things. And no, it was a very interesting time. It's it's something I'll always cherish. My season in life as a broadcaster, I thoroughly did enjoy that. And that experience is what I've managed to use with my interpreting. It's made it easier because obviously I'm still using my voice
Mm-hmm.
I'm still using presentation skills. So in its own way, it has helped, though it's slightly different, but the skills have
Dorcas,
been useful.
thank you so much for coming to spend 30 minutes talking to me about time,
Thank you.
your experience and your times at ZBC in broadcasting and, what you've done. And for people to see that, hey, you're still around, and really I've enjoyed it. And thank you so much. And to our
Thank
followers, I'm sure you've enjoyed listening to Dorcas Chibanda on ZBC News. Here she is, still rocking it. And, sometimes we want to look out and bring these people and say, where are they now? What are they doing? Who are they? Because people who don't remember you. But thank you so much. I hope to bring you again and to talk about the other part of your life, what you're doing in later life. And thank you so much, Dorcas. And for everybody, this is Sangwa Mapfumo. I will be seeing you again, and I'll bring you another person and bringing another ordinary person doing extraordinary stuff. You have a lovely evening. Good boy.